Welcome to our channel. Today's story is not just a drama, it's about how joy can turn into tragedy. How plans fall apart when you're expecting a new addition to the family, and love starts to fade when twins arrive. What do you do when you have to choose between work and family? When fears take over. Stay with us to find out if the characters can save their family, or if it's already too late. My life has never been easy, but I always believed I could handle it. I've been married to Julia for 8 years. We have 2 wonderful sons, Peter, who is 5, and little Thomas, who is just 3. Everything seemed perfect. We both worked hard to build a future for our children. Julia gave up her career at a private firm for a more flexible government job to be closer to the kids. I worked myself to the bone, 60 hours a week, to provide for our family. We were financially stable, but the pressure inside me grew each day. Sometimes I dreamed about how our boys would go to a good private school, how I could give them the education I could only dream of as a child. My family couldn't afford much, and I had to work from a young age just to make ends meet. I swore to myself that my children wouldn't know such hardships. But to achieve that, I had to keep up this frantic pace of work. Otherwise, my dream could collapse like a house of cards. Julia, on the other hand, always dreamed of a big house, a full family, and laughing children running around. She told me this from the very beginning, back when we met in college. Even then, she knew she wanted 3 kids. And I just wanted to make her happy. I promised her that someday we would have 3 children, even though deep down, I wasn't sure I could handle it. 2 kids already felt like the limit. Work, home, raising the boys. I felt like I was already balancing on the edge. And then, a year ago, Julia brought up the idea of a 3rd child again. She spoke with tenderness and hope, as if this was the fulfillment of her dream. I tried to dissuade her, convince her that 2 was the perfect number. But Julia was adamant. She always knew what she wanted and didn't stop until she got it. Another year passed, and the discussions about a 3rd child became more frequent in our home. Julia made no secret of her desire, and I increasingly felt the walls closing in around me. Work, kids, the need to be everywhere at once. It was already dragging me down. But I knew I had promised her 3 kids before we got married. We discussed it many times, and even though I felt that 2 was our maximum, I couldn't just crush her dream. "Michael," she said one evening as we were putting the kids to bed, "I know it's hard for you, but I believe things will get better with a 3rd child. Peter and Thomas are already growing up, they'll be in school soon, and it will get easier. I feel like another child will complete our family. We've always wanted this." I wanted to argue, to explain that now wasn't the time. But her eyes, full of hope, left me no room to say no. I saw how much she wanted this, how deeply this dream lived in her heart. Yes, I could keep resisting, trying to convince her that 2 children were already a miracle, that we should be grateful for what we had. But something inside me gave way. "Okay," I finally said, though inside I was gripped by fear. "We'll try. But Julia, you have to understand, this won't be easy. 3 kids are a huge responsibility. I don't want us to end up in a situation where we can't give them what they deserve." She nodded, her face lighting up with a smile, as if this moment was a true victory for her. But I felt the weight settle on my shoulders. We'd made the decision, and now there was no turning back. A few months later, she was already pregnant. Her joy was almost contagious. Every day she talked about how she was planning to arrange the nursery, how she dreamed of another baby, how the kids would play together. And I tried to share her enthusiasm, though inside I remained conflicted. My thoughts were occupied not with joy but with worry. Would I be able to handle it? How would we live with 3 children when 2 already demanded so much time and energy? But something inside me said it would be okay. When the time came for the first ultrasound, I was still trying to get used to the idea that we'd soon have a 3rd child in the family. Julia was over the moon. Her eyes lit up every time she mentioned the future baby. And I felt like I was standing on the edge of a cliff. But I tried to be strong for her, for our family. We sat in the doctor's office, holding hands, waiting to see our baby on the screen. Julia gently squeezed my hand and smiled at me, as if everything was perfect. But inside, a storm was raging. Thoughts about how we would manage with 3 children kept me awake at night. I tried to smile back, but it wasn't easy. "Well, let's see how the little one is doing," the doctor said with a smile, starting the examination. The screen flickered to life, and I saw the first image. My heart tightened with anticipation. But it wasn't a joyful feeling. It was a mixture of anxiety and fear. I was waiting to hear the usual words. One baby, everything's fine. But instead, I saw the doctor's face change. His smile was replaced with surprise. Wait a minute, he said, peering at the screen. It looks like we don't just have one baby here. I tensed, not understanding what he meant. Not one? What does that mean? Julia squeezed my hand harder, her eyes wide. Congratulations, the doctor finally said. You're having twins. At that moment, time seemed to slow down for me. Twins? I was trying to process the news, but it was too much. My head spun, and all the fears I had been suppressing came rushing to the surface. 4 children. Not 3, but 4. This wasn't just a blow, it was my world collapsing. Oh my God. Julia whispered, her face glowing with joy. Michael, can you believe it? Twins. It's a miracle. I looked at her, but I couldn't find the strength to share her joy. Inside, everything was screaming. This isn't a miracle, it's a disaster. How will we manage with 4 kids? How can I give them everything I promised? My heart pounded wildly, and I felt cold sweat on my forehead. We left the doctor's office in complete silence. Julia beamed with happiness, as if she had just won the lottery. And I could barely stand. The same thoughts kept running through my mind. For kids. How will I support them? How can I be a good father to each of them? When we got into the car, Julia turned to me and smiled. You look like you're about to cry, she said with a light laugh. You're happy, right? At that moment, I couldn't hold it in any longer. I don't know, I admitted, feeling my chest and throat tighten. It's all so scary. 4 kids, Julia. How will we manage? Her smile slowly faded. Julia looked at me intently, her smile gradually disappearing like morning mist under the sun's rays. I could see her face change, from joyful and glowing to serious, as if she was realizing for the first time what was happening. A heavy silence filled the car, broken only by the sound of our breathing. You're not happy, she asked quietly, her voice trembling as if she couldn't believe what she was hearing. I didn't know what to say. Inside me was a storm I couldn't contain. All the fears I had tried to suppress broke free. I just don't know how we'll manage, Julia, I said, avoiding her gaze. I thought 3 kids were already pushing our limits, and now 4. How will we handle it? Financially, emotionally, physically? Michael, we knew it might be tough, she spoke softly, but there was something wary in her voice. We always dreamed of a big family. I understand this is unexpected, but these are our children. How can you not be happy? I don't know, I repeated, feeling despair wash over me. I'm not ready for this. I'm barely managing with 2 kids and working 60 hours a week. And now I have to somehow handle 4. It's too much. Julia looked at me, her eyes filled with tears. I didn't want to hurt her, but I couldn't hide my true feelings. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine when my world was crumbling around me. Michael, her voice softened, but there was pain in it. I understand this is a shock, but we'll get through it. We've always managed. I'm scared too, but we have to support each other, not tear apart what we have. I sighed, staring out the window, trying to collect my thoughts. But inside me was chaos. How could I be the father who's there for his children if I spent most of my time at work? How could I give them the future I dreamed of when my salary would barely cover the needs of such a large family? My thoughts were tangled, and I didn't know how to find a way out of this situation. I just don't know, I finally said, if I can keep working like this and still be a good father to our kids. Maybe I'll have to quit my job and find something less demanding, but then we won't be able to afford the life you dreamed of, Julia. I feel like I have to choose, either work or family. She was silent, absorbing my words. Then she asked, her voice full of hope, but are you at least a little happy? It's a miracle, Michael. Twins. At that moment, something inside me broke. All my accumulated fears and emotions burst out in one sharp response. No, Julia. I'm not happy. I raised my voice, almost without realizing it. I'm not happy that our life is turning into chaos, and I don't know how to handle it. I can't be thrilled that everything I dreamed of for our kids is now at risk. You wanted this, but I wasn't ready. Her face paled, her eyes immediately filled with tears. She looked at me, unable to believe what I had just said. And I sat there, breathing heavily, realizing I had crossed a line. You didn't even ask how I'm feeling," she said quietly, her voice trembling with tears. "You're only thinking about yourself and your fears. I'm scared too, Michael. But you didn't think about that. You didn't think that I'm also worried, that this is a shock for me too. You just see everything through the lens of your problems." I wanted to say something, to apologize, but the words stuck in my throat. Julia cried, turning away from me, and I felt a huge chasm growing between us. After that fight, everything changed. Julia distanced herself from me, as if an invisible wall had grown between us. We used to be so close, sharing our thoughts and concerns, but now her gaze slid past me as if I were part of the furniture. She stopped talking to me about the future, about the kids, about how we would manage with the twins. Her silence weighed on me more than any words. I tried to apologize. Several times I approached her, trying to start a conversation, explain my feelings, but each time she brushed me off. Julia looked tired and lost, and though she continued to take care of the kids, I knew that something inside her had changed. She no longer looked at me with the same love and warmth. That feeling chilled me to the bone. "Julia, I would begin when we were alone. I'm sorry for how I reacted. I'm just scared. But I love you and our kids, and I want to support you." She remained silent, avoiding my eyes as if she didn't hear me. Sometimes it seemed like she lived in another world, one where I no longer existed. At night, I lay awake, listening to her quiet breathing beside me. We used to go to bed holding each other, talking about our day, planning the weekend, laughing at little things. Now she just turned to the wall, lost in her thoughts. It was agonizing to feel the woman I loved with all my heart gradually disappearing from my life. One evening, after the kids were asleep, I decided I couldn't go on like this any longer. I had to do something before everything fell apart completely. "Julia, we need to talk," I said, sitting down next to her on the couch. She didn't look at me, her hands resting on her stomach, and I noticed how gently she stroked it, as if protecting the future she saw for our children. That gesture tore me apart inside. "I know I was wrong," I continued, trying to find the right words. "But you have to understand that I'm struggling too. I didn't mean to hurt you, I just got scared. 4 kids, Julia. It's a huge responsibility. I don't know how we'll manage, but I don't want to lose you. I'm willing to do anything so we can get through this together." Finally, she turned her head and looked at me. Her eyes were full of pain and exhaustion. "Michael," she began quietly, "you don't even understand how much you hurt me. I always thought we were in this together, that we supported each other. But when I needed you most, you turned away. You were consumed by your fears, and you didn't care how I was feeling. You think only about your problems, but I have fears too. I don't know how we'll manage either. But instead of finding support in you, I got a cold wall." I lowered my head, feeling like a complete failure. She was right. I really hadn't considered that she might be feeling the same things. I was so consumed by my own fears that I didn't notice her pain. "I know," I managed to say, feeling my voice tremble. "And I'm truly sorry. But I want to fix it. I'm willing to do anything to earn back your trust, to make us a family again." Julia sighed and looked away again. "I don't know, Michael. I need time. This is all. Too much." Her words cut me. Time. How much time do we have before everything falls apart for good? I looked at her, at our life that was slowly slipping through my fingers, and I didn't know what to do next. Time passed, but nothing changed. Julia continued to distance herself, and even our usually cheerful, noisy kids seemed to sense the tension between us. The house that had once been full of laughter became quiet and cold. I tried to return to a normal life, but all my attempts to fix things with Julia were met with her silence and indifference. I dropped a few hints about maybe cutting back my work hours or even changing jobs to spend more time with the family, but Julia just nodded, saying nothing. It seemed to me that she no longer believed I could truly be there for her. That feeling gradually ate away at me from the inside. One evening, when I came home from work, the house felt especially empty. The kids were playing at their grandmother's, and I expected to find Julia in our bedroom or the kitchen. But she was nowhere to be found. I went upstairs and suddenly noticed that her wardrobe door was slightly open. On the shelf where her things usually were, there was nothing. My heart raced. I opened the wardrobe fully and saw that half of her clothes were gone. On the dresser lay a note. Simple, folded in half, with no name. I froze in place, unable to reach out and take it. Inside, everything turned upside down. I knew what it was. I knew this was the end. When I finally found the strength to read the note, my world crumbled. Michael, I can't live like this anymore. I'm tired of fighting alone. You said you wanted to support me, but I no longer feel that support. We've become strangers, and I don't see the point in continuing. I'm taking the kids and going to my mom's. I need time to think, and for you to think about what you want from this life. Julia. I stood there, holding the note in my hands, and felt the ground disappear beneath my feet. Julia was gone. She had taken the kids. My heart ached with pain, but it wasn't a sudden shock. It was the slow, torturous realization that I had lost her. Lost everything I had lived for. I went downstairs and sat on the couch, staring into the void. My thoughts bounced between memories of how it all started and how it had all fallen apart. We were happy, making plans, dreaming of the future, but somewhere along the way, something went wrong. I had been so consumed by my fears that I didn't see how I was gradually losing my family. I knew I could have done more. I could have been more attentive, more caring. I could have supported her when she needed me the most. But I chose fear over love. And now I sat alone in an empty house that was no longer our home. Night fell over the city, and the silence around me pressed in. It felt like the whole world had stopped, and I was left in this darkness alone. I didn't know what to do next, how to get Julia back, how to get my family back. But maybe it was too late. Maybe this moment was the point of no return. Hours passed, but I didn't move. I just sat in the dark, staring into nothing, trying to understand how the life I had worked so hard to build had collapsed before my eyes. Now Julia and the kids had their own life, and I was left with only empty rooms and an endless sense of guilt. And then I realized that the scariest thing wasn't that Julia had left. The scariest thing was that I had lost her long ago without even noticing. Thank you for listening to this dramatic story to the end. If you liked it, be sure to share your thoughts in the comments. Your opinion is very important to us. And if you have your own story that deserves to be heard, send it to the email listed in the description. Perhaps your story will be the foundation for our next video. Subscribe to the channel, hit the like button, and see you next time.